Hey guys, here today with another Sure Garage Knife video. Today we have in front of us the custom division Hati Magnetic, which is the newest custom division model as of the making of this video. It was first released at the Las Vegas Custom Knife Show 2022 that took place earlier in January this year. It actually accompanied another knife that came out with very similar dimensions called the Titanium, which is the custom version of this particular model here, but with two titanium handles instead of, what we expect to see with a normal Hati, which is a titanium frame lock with a carbon fiber composite material side such as G10. Now, this knife has been a long time coming for me. I think the Hati hasn't seen a lot of love since the last custom division model back in 2018 with the Hati Bronze. It's really great to see a new custom division model here, and I'm really hoping that we'll see some of these features. When we talk about this video today, you'll see why this knife is so special, but hopefully we'll see some of these features also come down to an updated Hati production knife as well, since I believe that's actually the last knife in the lineup to really receive some kind of update. The 111, the F3, the F95, the Neon have all received updates. There have even been new models with the Quantum and the Stellar, but the Hati Revised, the Hati R, really hasn't seen any changes since it had debuted many, many years ago. I want to say more than 4, potentially even 5 years now, so it's been quite a long time. But anyways, let's go ahead and take a look at the size and specs of this knife here. Really not too much to talk about. Put it up against another F95 size knife. You can see they are the same size. We also have a Neon, which is smaller, and a 111, which is of course larger. Now, this being an F95 size knife, you can expect it to have all of the same dimensions, at least when it comes to lengths here, which means we have that 4 inches of cutting length, and we also have a handle length of around 8 3/4 inches and a closed handle length of, let's see here, closed handle length of just around 5 inches. Now, taking a look here at the weight of the knife is where things get quite interesting. Now, in the beginning, I said that this knife has an emphasis on the thinness, and that really helps contribute to the lightness of the knife. Here you can see that we're looking at 3.33 ounces. So 3 1/3 ounces, pretty good for a full 4-inch sized blade. Now, taking a look at the blade here, you can see we do have S90V being used. This is one of Sergey's all-time favorite steels. Really nice to see it being used in the custom division lineup again. We've seen a lot of S110 recently with knives such as the Kami, which was a production collaboration with Dmitry Sinkovich. We also have the 111 Deep Space and the Neon NL that were also done in S110V. So really nice to see an S90V making a comeback. I think we did see it actually recently in the F3 NS as well. So it seems like that steel is sticking around in the custom division lineup. Now, the blade itself, of course, is finished to a higher degree than the standard production knives here. You can see we have that much more refined finish on the primary bevel. We also have the satin flats, which help contribute to the smoothness that we see in all of the custom division knives. And we also have this updated extract cut here. Now, Sergey had been, slowly making this extract cut, which this is the cut below the jimping here, as they call it, bigger and bigger and making it more minimal. But this is the first time we've seen it extend out this far, and I absolutely love it. I think this is the final iteration of the extract cut as we know it. Really, really nice, very nice sweeping lines here. It really goes all the way out to the swedge here. The jimping on top is much wider than we've seen on other knives as of recent. It is actually quite similar to the jimping that we see on the 111 Deep Space, which is very, very wide. You can see it's the same type of jimping here. And just like the Deep Space, we can see inside of the jimping grooves, there is micro milling as well, which gives a nice aesthetic look to it. Doesn't seem to be as obvious as on the Deep Space, but if you take a look closely, you can see it there. The swedge on the blade is also quite nice and helps complement and give it that very aggressive look. I think it goes absolutely well with the extract cut here, and something that we see on the Neon Zero and the F3 NS as well. Very similar swedge right here. Now again, that 3mm blade stock is incredibly thin. Really, really love the thinness of this knife, and it's an overall theme you'll see when talking about the other features as well. The blade stock, 4mm, is usually considered the standard for the F95 size. We have knives such as the F95 Slim, new to Slim, which are done in a 3.5mm thickness. New knives such as the 111 Gen 5, which this is the custom division version of, also have a 3.5mm blade. Neon as well comes standard with 3.5mm. That's considered the thin blade stock for Shirogorov knives. We also have 3.2, which is seen in a couple of limited knives. The most recent one being the TKI Vegas 2022 Show Hati that was done in 3.2mm M398, I believe. And then we have 3mm, which is very uncommon for the workshop. I actually can't think of another knife off the top of my head that is using 3mm for its blade stock. There is a knife that's using 2.8mm. I believe there is a full custom 111 from way back that had something like that. And also, on a more recent note, a show limited special from Arsenal in Russia that happened last year that was using a 2.8mm. But you know, that's incredibly thin, and 3mm as well is extremely thin as well. So really nice to see that blade stock being used. Really is one of the main features of the knife, I think, is just having this incredibly unique blade stock thickness. Moving on to the handle here, you can see that the material that's used is Carbo-tie. Now, Carbo-tie is a very recent material that's being made by Carbon Plate. It's using very, very fine carbon fiber threads alongside with a metal to give some color to it. This one right here is using magnesium dust, which is why the knife is called the Hati Magnetic. I asked them about this, so this is how I got that answer. There wasn't really anything to do with magnetism. It was pretty much just because magnesium sounds like magnetic. So, you know how the Russians are doing with their English. But very cool material here. You can see that it has a lot of depth to it, despite the fact that there is just so much magnesium dust going on in the material. Unlike any other carbon fibers, all of the Hati magnetics I've seen have had very consistent loads of magnesium dust. There are some knives such as the Hati Bronze where it's definitely possible to get one that has more bronze dust than others, but these Hati magnetics that I've seen about 4 or 5 so far, have all had really nice magnesium dust, and you can see here it's just a wonderful material. In the pictures it really didn't look that great, but seeing it in person, and hopefully if I can capture in the video here, this material is absolutely amazing. I hope to see something similar to this, perhaps maybe even in a bronze dust version in the future. Now, going on and taking a look at the pivot here, you can see the pivot collar is very nicely polished to match the screw here. Of course, this is the larger screw that is indexed with a ball bearing so that it is not free spinning. You can also see here the cuts on the top and the bottom of the handle here. And if you take a look very closely, you can see there is some very fine silk milling in those extract cuts on the handle. The main portion of the handle, of course, has the classic Hati wave. You can see here on the show side as well. This Hati wave pattern has pretty much been there since the Hati had first come out, so it's really nice to see the continuation of that pattern. The Hati Bronze, the last custom vision that came before it, had silk milling, so it's really nice to see the Hati pattern on the Hati. Now, another interesting thing, if we take a look here on the rear, we have a darkened titanium plate here with the Shirogorov logo. Now, Sergey has often liked to put the logo for Hatis on the blade, especially on the production knives. Of course, on the custom division, it really can't be where the custom division logo is. So it traditionally has been on the handle somewhere. What Sergey has been doing as of recent, which I think is really cool, is especially on materials, on knives where the material is a carbon fiber or something that's very flashy, is to have these metallic plates with the logo engraved on them. You can see here the 111 Deep Space has something similar. This one has it as an integral part of the rear Chicago screw assembly, which I think is really cool. This is also indexed by virtue of having the threads on this titanium plate being offset. Those offset threads connect to the barrel that goes through the rear portion of the knife, and that plate, or those threads being offset on the plate, causes this to be indexed so that it is oriented correctly, which I think is a really, really neat trick there. And of course, since Shirogorov is making all of this hardware, they can do things like this quite easily. Moving on to the lock side here, you can see we have that beautiful Hati wave. And of course, this being normal titanium, you can see it's much easier to see the micro milling that is on the extract cuts on the handle. You can take a look here at the lock bar. You can see we have this raised portion. This raised portion, of course, is to give the lock bar insert screw, which is screwed in from the inside, more engagement for the threads. We also have the pivot collar on this side as well, which I think is something that we hadn't seen on some of the older custom division Hatis. I believe the Hati Bronze had a pivot collar on both sides, but some of the older ones didn't. So it's really nice to see that here. One interesting thing to note, however, is I believe this is darkened titanium on the lock side pivot collar, but if you take a look on the show side, it is polished titanium. I think it's just to give it some contrast with the handle and the screw on the lock side here. Really wonderful, very nice tumbling done here. Much more refined tumbling than what we see on the production knives, of course. And these flutes just catch the light in a very beautiful way, as you can see here. Moving on to the rear of the clip, you can see the clip is blind screwed. We have really nice micro milling here as well. Also on the lock bar relief cut, which is of course the external cut, as all newer knives are. But anyways, going back to the clip, you can see it's also, I wouldn't say this is satin, I would say this is more of a burnished finish here. There is no hint of lines in the satin, but it is quite reflective and quite shiny. Really like the finish that's done here on the clip. Another interesting thing to note is the clip has a little relief cut here for the rear of the screw. The screw is the smaller, reduced diameter one, which doesn't interfere with the clip, at least on the newer production F95s. I don't know why that this relief cut was needed, if it's needed at all, because the production F95 NLs, the newest version with the blind screwed clip, has that reduced diameter screw in the rear, which doesn't interfere with the clip. But it looks like this knife does have a little relief cut here, which I think is pretty interesting. Also, I wonder if I can get a good shot of this, but well, maybe I can't. But the milling on the inside of the clip is quite nice as well. Something that really you can only see clearly if you have the knife disassembled, but hopefully you can take my word for it. Lastly, moving on, this backspacer. I think we have one of the first examples of a backspacer that is actually truly floating. We've had backspacers on the Quantum and the Stellar where you have kind of a triangle. If you took a look at the knife from this angle, you would see that the handles are kind of angled like this in an upside down triangle fashion. And then you have a backspacer that has different angles on it so that you get the illusion and shadow of a floating backspacer with it having hard contact on the handles. But here you can see that we get a much greater effect, and the backspacer is actually made thinner than it actually could have been on knives that have full contact on the backspacer, such as, let's say, this Neon here. What this really does, given that really thin backspacer profile, is just magnify the effect of thinness on the knife, and I think that's really nice. Also, the finishing on the backspacer is different than what we see on the rest of the titanium. Much more polished higher polish finish on the Backspacer, which I think looks absolutely great. Again, I believe this material is titanium. It's just finished differently than what we see on the handle. Another very interesting note is these cuts right here up front on the titanium and the carbon fiber here. That really, again, helps emphasize the thinness of the knife. You can see the blade just fitting in here perfectly in that very, very thin gap. One other feature that I think that this buildup of material here on the rear of the handle it does is it also helps prevent you from kind of getting your fingers too close in this gap here, which would be hard to in the beginning because this blade is of a thinner stock thickness than a normal Shirogorov knife. But of course, you know, any extra protection you can have here to prevent yourself from cutting yourself, I think is really nice. And again, it does go to really show off the wonderful 3D machining that Shirogorov does, both on the outside and inside of the knives. Oh, another thing that I wanted to mention actually is that this knife, most knives, when you think of custom vision and the customs, you think of 3D contouring. Now, this knife is actually slightly 3D contoured, but not in the traditional kind of convex way that you would see on custom divisions and customs. You can see here this is two-dimensional neon, completely flat handles. We have a custom neon with 3D contoured handles. This one is actually contoured, but instead of being convex, it's actually concavely contoured. Let me see if I can get something flat here. Give me a second. Okay, here. So if you take a look at the handles and you lay something flat on top, you can see that there is actually a gap. You can see the shadow. You can see that there's a slight convex contour to the inside of the handles. This effect is more pronounced when you run your finger across this part here, which is pretty flat, and then you go towards the middle of the handle, you can really feel the convexness. This is quite interesting, and I think actually helps you grasp the knife a little bit better. You can kind of feel when your hand's slipping off of it when you move to the top. I think that's a very, very nice touch. That's something that I didn't notice at first. Someone actually brought it to my attention at the show. Taking a look at the inside here, a little bit hard, but of course you can see there's full milling. And when you take a look at the inside of the Backspacer, you can see the incredibly small font that they used to actually get the series or the batch number for this knife, along with the CD model and year number engravings. Again, using the new system, you can see here that this is a 2022 custom division first knife of 2022, and this is number 8 out of the batch of 50. Now, last thing I wanted to talk about for this knife is the new pivot system. Now, this pivot system is incredibly unique and solves one of the problems that I've actually personally experienced kind of fiddling with a couple of Hatis and F3s. Now, to kind of have it in brief summary, the way that the Hati works is basically if you just took a titanium handle F95 and you just made the show side in carbon fiber or G10. What Shirogorov has done in the past is have the blade be counterbored on this side. And what that counterboring would do was kind of allow you to have the bearings being held on one side so that the carbon fiber could just have a race for the washer. The washer would basically, once you put the washer in the carbon fiber handle, it would be basically level with the inside of the rest of the handle on the inside. Now, what Sergey has done here is that steel washer that the bearings ride on is now one solid piece that goes all the way through the height of the carbon fiber here and actually forms the pivot collar. Now, what this does is it allows for hard contact on metal for the pivot screw. On a normal Hati, you can see that the pivot screw, which is reversed on a production knife, the pivot screw would screw in on the show side, and the bottom of the shoulder of the pivot screw would contact carbon fiber. This creates issues with tolerancing since carbon fiber has compression issues. Of course, it's not a flimsy material, something that you can easily press and change the dimensions of, but there are tolerancing issues compared to, say, titanium or another metal. So having this steel piece right here that extends throughout the entire handle allows for a hard stop on metal when you screw this down, or in this case, because custom divisions are screwed on the opposite side, a hard shoulder for the female part of the screw assembly. Then you can see here that this part extends through the rest of the handle and then also serves as the steel washer that we have on production Hatis, which also has the cage for the roller bearings to ride on. Now, when I mean cage is, if you take a look at a normal bearing assembly here, you can see a roller bearing cage here. You can see that there is this outer ring which prevents the rollers from moving outwards. On one side of the Hati, the carbon fiber side, you can see here how there's basically a pivot collar on the inside as well, and this outer ring on the outside here is missing, and there's basically just kind of it looks like a wheel with spokes coming out of it that holds the roller bearings. Very difficult to describe. I'll actually post a picture of it in the description so you guys can take a look at it. I think you guys will be very interested if you like looking at the internal details of this knife. But basically, in short, Suregrove had an Instagram photo up on this, with a cross section that was a little bit hard to decipher, but the real intention for this new pivot system on the Hati is to allow for a hard stop and on metal contact for the pivot screw assembly. It also, again, serves to simplify the number of pieces that are needed, since you don't need pivot collars that only serve an aesthetic purpose. The pivot collar on the show side now also doubles as the washer for the roller bearings to ride on as well. Man, that was a lot to talk about. The accompanying knife actually that came out at TKI Vegas, the special Friday night event that happened before Las Vegas Custom Knife Show, also had a titanium version of this knife, the Titanium, which is kind of in a weird spot, since Hati usually means, again, a F95 knife with a composite material. But again, I think it was really trying to showcase that technology. I believe that one actually has two of these kind of pivot collar / washer bearing underlays on both sides of the knife, and probably served as kind of a prototype and way for Sergey to kind of test the technology out. Hopefully I can get that for review. I believe my friend actually has it. I'll ask him, see if I can review it. But again, really cool technology here, and definitely take a look at the picture in the description. I'll link it down below. That's pretty much it for this knife. Again, ran pretty long as always. Again, I'm really excited about this, and I'm honestly, given all of these really cool features of this knife, from the thinness, the new pivot system, the incredibly awesome material, I'm really excited to see what Suregrove is going to do with the 2022 custom division lineup. This knife is incredibly close actually to the custom Titanium, and it seems again that the customs and the custom divisions are really coming really close. The gap between them is really closing. So really excited to see the next models for the 2022 year, and hopefully you'll see them here on this channel in another video in the future. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and hope you guys also have a great day. I'll see you guys next time.